Hi, everyone. Today, I just want to talk about when you fall down, having the strength to get back up again. And I mean that in terms of if you have worked really hard to overcome things in your life, and then something happens where you fall back into it. So, as a little backstory, um, many of you know that I'm on the Merch Money show. And last week, I was saying that I was discouraged. And Amy Springer and my mom heard that, and they knew that I probably was slipping back into depression, which is something that I used to have. So I really want to thank both of them for reaching out to me and helping me through the last week because they were absolutely right. I had worked so hard over the last few years to do all the right things so I wouldn't have depression anymore. Eat the right things, exercise, see counselors, like everything I needed to do. And so it was very frustrating to fall back into it. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how frustrating it is when you fall into old thought patterns or old bad habits or anything like that. And I also want to go into depression a little more and talk about what it used to be like for me and what it's like now, because I hope that that could help some of you out there. A lot of entrepreneurs suffer from depression for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons is just being home by yourself all day. And another one of the reasons is a lot of depressed people, they feel like they need to get their self-worth from their accomplishments. So they tend to just want to do more and more and more looking for that self-worth. So that a lot of entrepreneurs are like that. So I really want to talk about depression just from my own point of view. I'm not a doctor, but just to tell you my story and hope that that can help somebody out there. So I'm going to start with how I was a few years ago. So quick backstory, I think I've always had some level of depression, but it really came out in when I was about 27 years old. When I was 26, I tried to have kids and then nothing happened. So I went to the doctor when I was 27, and from 27 to 30 was just very, very dark years for me. So to kind of explain a little bit about my thought processes back then is everything it was all negative, all negative self-talk. And when I could kind of function like that if everything was going along normal, but when something bad happened, I couldn't function anymore because I was just barely functioning when life was good. And when challenges came up or something bad happened, like not being able to have a kid when I really wanted a kid, it spun me out of control into really dark places. It was to the point where I went to a counselor and there was some kind of form to fill out beforehand, and it asked, I can't remember the exact question, but something like, have you cried in the last month? How many times have you cried, or something like that? And I read that question and I was like, in the last month? Do people go through months of their life without crying? Like, I couldn't believe it. Because at that point in my life, I was crying all the time, all the time. There was not a single day that would go by that I didn't cry. So I couldn't even comprehend the idea that people could go a whole month without crying. And I was a full grown adult. So um, basically, I would get in the car, drive to work, and my commute was an hour. So it was sitting by myself for an hour, and I could not make it through that hour without crying because there was nothing to distract me. It was just myself. Then I'd get to work. Sometimes I'd make it through the day at work without crying. Sometimes I wouldn't. I'd close my door. Luckily, I had my own office. So I'd close my door. Then I had to go home. So I'd drive the whole hour home. I don't know if I ever made it all the way on that hour home without crying. Then I try to get through dinner and get through the day. Sometimes I was successful without crying. Sometimes I wasn't. Almost never could I go to bed and make it all night without crying. At some point during the night, I would cry. So usually I was crying 4 separate times in an average day. every day for years. At least 3 full years, that was my life. Um, and it got to the point where I had to add into my morning routine, add in waking up 15 to 20 minutes early to put some kind of cold something on my face because my whole face was puffy from crying so much. So I'd have to put like a wet washcloth or wet paper towel or something cold on my face to try to get the swelling to go down. That's how bad it was. And part of that, it took a long time. Eventually, I started to learn better thought processes. I learned better things. But one of the reasons why I was stuck in such a deep depression was because I didn't have enough self-worth to begin with. And when something like this happened, it felt like a direct attack on me. It felt like God or the universe or whoever didn't want me to have kids specifically. So it felt like I wasn't good enough. So I already didn't feel good enough. And then when that happened, it was like, really, I wasn't good enough. That even the whole universe didn't think I was good enough to be a mom. So that was the thought processes going in my head is I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And that's common with depression. Like with depression, it usually has something to do with you not feeling good enough. And so eventually I found ways to get out of it. I mean, if you're going through it right now, I'm so sorry. It's so hard. It seems like such an easy thing, like, well, just be happy. But it's so hard and it takes so much work to find your way out of that darkness because the problem with depression is it just weakens your whole body. It weakens everything. And you have so much negative self-talk that you don't have the motivation or the ability to make the changes you need to make to feel better. So I gradually started to learn new thought processes. I carefully learned all about diet and how to change my diet. Eventually, years later, I went to a dietitian and found out that I was gluten intolerant. And that was leading to some of it because every time I was eating gluten, it literally affects how I think, which is crazy, but it actually really is true. So I learned that. I started exercising more, got more sunshine. So there's a lot of things like that you can do, but also just your mindset. You have to learn how to love yourself and be happy with yourself. So that's a really hard thing. And when I was at the darkest part of it, I couldn't even imagine. I'm like, why would you love yourself? Like, it just didn't even make sense to me. I'm like, you should only love yourself if you're successful or if you've done a lot of good things. Like, to me, it was all conditional. It had to be conditional. You had to kind of earn your own love. And it's so silly. It's like most people learn unconditional love when they have a child because they just look at this baby and they feel unconditional love looking at this new baby. And the baby hasn't done anything to earn that love, but you're able to just love the baby unconditionally. So you have to kind of learn that for yourself, like learn how to love yourself unconditionally right now. You don't have to wait to love yourself until you are able to have a baby or wait to love yourself until you get a promotion at work or until you do better with your business or, you don't have to keep putting these things in the future of when you're going to love yourself, when you're going to give yourself unconditional love. So I was forced to eventually start to learn it because I couldn't go on like that. Like somehow I went on like that for like 3 years, but it's not sustainable. Like you just literally can't have that level of pain for that many years. Like eventually you have to figure out a way out. And so I just did a lot of hard work to figure out how to be okay with not being able to have kids and be okay with myself for any mistakes that I made or anything wrong, be able to forgive God or whoever, the universe for making it so that I couldn't when other people could. You have to just be willing to just be like, I'm okay the way I am. And that's a hard thing, but it's something that everybody has to try to learn. And it's, in a way, it's you're lucky if you go through experiences like that where it's like in your face, like you have to change. Because if that hadn't happened, I would have had just a level of just being, oh, like, functional, not really loving myself, not really having self-worth, but functional, where I wasn't necessarily crying. Like I could get through the day. But because I went through that experience, I went from being functional to not being functional. And that helped me be able to face everything and be like, okay, well, I have to be able to love myself even when I can't have kids, even when I fail at different things, even when I can't have what I want. I still have to learn how to be happy, still learn how to love myself. And it's something hard. It's something that all of us need to work on, because there's very few people that do it perfectly, like really know how to love themselves unconditionally. Usually there's some kind of condition, like, oh, well, I have to at least work hard. I have to do this. I have to do that. And the problem with that way of thinking is that you're never going to be enough. You're never going to be able to do enough to impress yourself. It doesn't matter if you become the richest person in the world. It doesn't matter if you run the fastest or the best singer. It doesn't matter. No matter how good you get, you will be able to find somebody else better at something else, some other category. So you're never going to be enough. So if you keep pushing it out and be like, I'll love myself when I do this, I'll love myself when I do that, it never happens. You never will do enough to love yourself if you're basing it on conditions and you're basing it on things you have to accomplish. Unfortunately, that day never comes where you've accomplished enough. So, but the good thing is, if you are able to learn how to love yourself, even when you're failing, even when you're unhappy, is that if you really master that, which I haven't, I'll get to that in a minute, but I'm a lot better than I used to be. But when you master that, you don't need anything else. You have already made yourself happy. You're already unconditionally loving yourself. You're full from the inside. You're happy from the inside out. And when you're full and you're happy from the inside, everything else is extra. You start wanting to do well just because you want to use the gifts that you've been given, just because you want to take care of your body, you want to live your best life, and you're not doing it to try to prove to yourself anything, prove to anybody else anything. You're doing it because you want to use the gifts you've been given. You're doing it out of gratitude, that you're grateful that you get to be alive, that you get to experience this world. So you start doing great things just because you're grateful, not because you're trying to prove something. So learning how to just love yourself is the first step. You have to be able to love yourself first before you're able to love other people, before you're able to accomplish great things, because then everything comes from a place of gratitude. Everything comes from a place of, you're doing these things, you're learning, you're growing because you're grateful, because you're happy that you get the chance to do these things. And you're happy that you get to help other people in the process. So if you're going through anything right now, I'm so sorry. And I just want you to know that all the time I hear people say, like, hang out around positive people. You don't want to hang out around negative people. And I always just feel like a little bit of pain, because I'm like, oh my gosh, well, I used to be one of those negative people. And I understand that thought process, because we all have energy and it's kind of contagious. So if you're around positive people, you end up feeling positive. And when you're around negative people, you end up feeling negative. So I understand the want to hang around positive people. And I want to be a positive person myself. But I also understand that negative people are fighting tremendous battles. And I've been in that battle before. So when I see a negative person, I just see a strong person fighting a really tough battle. So I just want you to know that you inspire me, even if you're negative, even if you're struggling. I'm still inspired by you. And I just am I know how hard it is. I know how dark it can be. So I just want to know that I want you to know that I'm rooting for you and that you can change. You really can. There's help you can get. There's things you can do. So just know eventually you'll find your way out of that darkness and you'll be able to experience happiness and joy. Um, but just know, like, I just I can't be somebody that never hangs around negative people. Like, to me, I learned something from all people, whether you're positive, whether you're negative, whether you're happy, whether you're sad, whether you're struggling or not. Um, all people inspire me because everyone I've met is fighting some kind of battle, is trying to grow, is trying to become a better person. And all of you inspire me all the time. So I just want to thank you guys for inspiring me. Um, so that brings us to today. So last week, I started to fall into depression again, and it was very frustrating because it had been quite a while. I had been happy for quite a long time. It had been a long time before I felt that I had felt depressed. And I had kind of thought I wasn't going to feel depressed again ever. Like, I just thought that now I knew how to think positively and I was doing all the right things, eating the right food, exercising. So it kind of caught me off guard where I was like, oh my God, I'm depressed. Like, how did this happen? I'm like, maybe I was wrong to think I could ever change. Like, maybe I'm just always going to be depressed my whole life. And I was really down. I couldn't figure out how to get out of it. And then I started to realize, like, we fall, but we can get back up. So I got back up and was willing to try again. And I started to realize that it wasn't the same as it used to be. Even though I started to have depression, it started to feel bad, it wasn't the same because when you have depression, you have so many negative thoughts and you're believing all of them. So you're thinking so many negative thoughts about yourself and you're believing every single one. Now, when I was having those negative thoughts, I wasn't believing them. I would somewhat believe them and then be like, that's not really true. So it was like, it was a difference from what it used to be like. So even if you fall, just know, like, you've been through experiences. If you were able to get out of whatever the situation is at one point, you'll be able to get out of it again. And you probably are not as far down as you think. You've learned something from your experience before, and it'll help you going forward. So whether it's getting out of depression again, for me, it's gonna be a lot easier this time than it was 3-4 years ago. Okay, more than 3-4 years ago. I'm turning 36 tomorrow. All right, 10 years ago. But anyway, what was I saying? So no matter what the thing is, if you get stuck on drugs again, if you become an alcoholic again, if you lose all your weight, lose 100 pounds and then gain it back, it's still easier the second time because you know already that you can do it. You know you can get out of it. So you'll be able to get out of it again and just look at it. Just look at what happened and try to, after you feel better. So for me, I had to feel better. So I had to slowly get out of the depression. And then once I was out of it, then kind of look back and be like, what happened? Did I do, like, what caused that? What happened? And all of us can do that when we fall. When we fall, just kind of look back and see what happened. Was there anything that you could kind of learn from this going forward? And for me, there was quite a few things I could learn. One of them was that I had slowly started to slip into eating gluten again. Not all the time, but I was making more and more exceptions. And I really can't eat gluten. I really just can't. And I have to exercise. So I was exercising, but I was only exercising twice a week. And I really need to exercise at least like 3 to 4 times a week. So I wasn't exercising enough and I was eating gluten. 2 things that contributed to it. The other thing is that I've learned how to think more positively. So I can handle regular everyday life. I can handle somewhat bad things happening. But what I still have trouble handling is when I make a mistake. So being able to forgive myself quickly and move on is something I still need to work on. So over the last week, what happened was I was doing my taxes, and I found out that when I sold my rental property this past year, there was a lot more capital gains than I thought there would be. So I was thinking of capital gains in terms of how much you bought the property and then how much you sold it. And I had bought it at the peak back in 2007. So I was selling it for more, but not very much more. So I thought the capital gains would be very minimal. I kind of forgot about depreciation. And so when you claim depreciation all those years, that counts towards having more capital gains. So, it's obvious in hindsight. But I was so mad at myself. I'm like, how could you not know this? It's obvious. And plus, used to be a loan officer. I went to business school. There's the internet. I could have looked it up, but I just didn't. For whatever reason, I just completely didn't think about depreciation. I just didn't. So it's better if you could just forgive yourself and be like, you know what? I was focused on my business. I was focused on other things. This is the first time I'm selling a rental property. Cut yourself some slack. You made a mistake. You forgot about depreciation. You won't forget again the next time. But I was not able to be easy on myself like that. I was very, I went back to all my old thought problems or thought patterns about how stupid that was and how, all these things about how I should have known better. And that in combination with not eating as well, not exercising as well, it caught me off guard. It swung me right back into depression. So, going forward, I need to be more careful when I make a mistake to be able to just be okay with that and be able to forgive myself and move on, because all of us make mistakes, and that's part of depression. If you struggle with depression, if it's something that you end up falling back into, just be on the lookout if you make mistakes, because that's something that could trigger you back into it. You got to make sure that you can forgive yourself and love yourself, even when you make mistakes, even when you do something wrong, even when you are not hitting your goals, or I don't know, gain weight or whatever the case is. You still have to be able to understand that you have self-worth, that you matter, that you are a human being that has worth. Even when you don't feel, you think that you are doing things that make it so you no longer have self-worth. It's not true. You always have worth. And just learning how to really believe that and really understand that you matter. So just please let me, ask any questions, or just let me know if there's anything that I can do to help you. But I have so much faith in all of you that you can overcome whatever you're up against. So whether it's depression, anxiety, any kind of addiction, or just, who knows, physical injury, or most people have something. So if you don't have anything, that's fantastic. But if you do, just know it is possible to change. Life is so different now. Like, even though I went through that this past week, I slipped back for a little while. For the most part, life is so much better. I mean, I can go months and months without crying, and that was something that I never could have imagined. And I can feel happiness. Like, I love doing my business. I love meeting all of you guys. And I'm so much more just comfortable in my own skin, and I know that I'm going to make mistakes. I know that I'm not perfect, and I'm okay with that. So I still always am trying to grow and trying to become a better person, but it's just because I want to, and not because I feel like I need to in order to be happy with myself. I've already gone through all of that. I've already been at the bottom. So I already know that that I mattered even when I was at the bottom. So I just wish all of you the best, and I hope you have an amazing day. And thank you so much for watching this. And have a wonderful day.